The galaxy banished them, but humanity took them. 6 months had passed since the Valoran ships had arrived in Earth's solar system. Dr. Hyun Kim stood in his laboratory on the moon's far side, looking through a microscope at something that shouldn't exist but did. The Valoran nanites moved across the slide like tiny dancers, too small to see individually but visible as a shimmering mass when they worked together. "Incredible," he whispered, not for the first time. He had been studying the nanites for months now, and they still amazed him. They weren't just machines. They were almost alive, capable of learning and adapting to whatever situation they encountered. A Valoran scientist named Kelvor worked beside him. Kelvor had been a medical researcher before the exile, and now he was teaching human scientists everything he knew about the nanites. "Your people fear them," Kelvor said quietly. "Just like the Coalition did." Hyun looked up from the microscope. "Some do, but fear comes from not understanding. The more we learn, the less scary they become." He gestured at his notes, pages and pages of research. "These nanites could change everything for us. We've been trying to colonize hostile worlds for decades, but humans can only survive in very specific conditions. Your nanites could help us adapt, if your people will accept them," Kelvor said. There was doubt in his voice. Hyun understood that doubt. Things weren't going smoothly everywhere. On Mars, in the colony called New Sol, tensions were getting worse every day. Do-Hyun Lee knew all about those tensions. He was the director of the New Sol Refugee Integration Center, which was a fancy title for a very difficult job. His office was a small room in a prefabricated building, and his desk was covered with complaints, requests, and reports of problems. The latest report made him want to put his head down on that desk and not lift it up. There had been another protest yesterday. A group of human colonists had gathered outside the Valoran housing complex, shouting about resources and overcrowding. The protest had been peaceful at first, but then someone had thrown a rock. Then someone else had thrown a bottle. Within minutes, security had to step in. "We don't have enough for everyone," one of the protest leaders had shouted. "Why are we giving our water and our food to aliens when our own children go without?" Do-Hyun had tried to explain that the resource calculations had been carefully done, that nobody was going without necessities, that the Valorans were contributing to the colony's work. But Fear didn't listen to logic. Fear only heard that there were strangers here, different strangers, and Fear wanted them gone. The door to his office opened. Lieutenant Somin Kang walked in, still in her security uniform. She looked exhausted. "We need to talk about last night." "I saw the reports," Do-Hyun said. "How bad is it really?" Somin sat down heavily. "It's getting worse. Last night wasn't just a protest. Someone tried to sabotage the Valoran habitat's oxygen system. If we hadn't caught it in time, 200 people would have suffocated." Do-Hyun felt cold.
"Do we know who?"
"We have suspects. Extremists who have been posting online about how the Valorans are dangerous, how they're going to contaminate humanity with their nanites." Somin shook her head. "Never mind that every scientific study says that's impossible. Never mind that the Valorans have been nothing but grateful and helpful. Some people just want someone to hate. We need to do something before someone dies," Do-Hyun said, already working on it. "I've asked Elder Thriss to address both communities tomorrow. Maybe if people hear directly from the Valorans, they'll understand." Elder Thriss was old, even by Valoran standards. Her hair had gone completely silver, and she moved slowly, but her eyes were still sharp and kind. The next day, she stood in the central square of New Sol, with humans and Valorans gathered around her. Security officers like Somin watched carefully, ready for any trouble. Thriss spoke in a quiet voice, but somehow everyone could hear her clearly. "I know many of you are afraid of us," she said. "I understand that fear. We are different from you. We carry nanites in our blood that you do not understand. You wonder if we are safe, if we are a threat to your families." The crowd was silent, listening. "Let me tell you a story," Thriss continued. "Long ago, my people were not so different from yours. We fought wars over resources, over territory, over ideas. We nearly destroyed ourselves. Our world was dying from pollution and conflict. Our children were being born sick, weaker with each generation. We were going extinct, and we couldn't stop fighting long enough to save ourselves." She paused, looking around at all the faces watching her. "Then our scientists created the nanites. They were meant to heal our children, to repair the damage we had done to ourselves. The accident that spread them to all of us? We thought it was the end. We thought we had doomed ourselves. But instead we were saved. The nanites healed us. They made us stronger. They forced us to change, to adapt, to become something new. A human voice called out from the crowd. But that's why the coalition banished you. Because you changed. Yes, Thriss agreed. They banished us because we were no longer what we had been. Because they feared change more than they valued life. Because it was easier to cast us out than to accept that we were different. She looked directly at the person who had spoken. Are humans the same? Do you fear change more than you value life? Another long silence. Then Thriss said something that changed everything. The nanites did more than heal our bodies. They changed how we think. Before them, we could hurt each other, kill each other because we could see each other as enemies. But the nanites connected us in small ways. We could feel that we were all part of the same whole. We couldn't hate each other anymore because we understood deep down that hurting another Valoran was hurting ourselves. She gestured to all the Valorans and humans around her. We don't expect you to carry our nanites. We don't want to change you. But we hope you can learn what we learned without them, that we are all connected, that your survival and ours are linked together now, that we can only move forward if we do it together. An old human woman stepped forward from the crowd. She had tears on her face. My son was one of the people who tried to sabotage your habitat. He's in security custody now. I want to apologize. I want to say I'm sorry for what he tried to do. Thriss walked to the woman and took her hands. Your son is afraid. Fear makes people do terrible things, but fear can be healed just like any other wound. Let us help heal it together. Back in his laboratory, Hyun was making a breakthrough. He had been working with Kelvor, trying to understand if the nanites could be adapted for human use. Not to change humans into Velorans, but to help with medicine, with healing. Look at this, he said excitedly, showing Kelvor the test results. We introduced the nanites to human cancer cells. The nanites identified the cancer as damaged tissue and began repairing the cellular structure. Within hours, the cancer cells were either destroyed or converted back to healthy cells. Kelvor studied the data carefully. This would need years of testing before it could be used on living humans. I know. But Kelvor, do you understand what this means? We could cure cancer. We could heal injuries that are currently permanent. We could help people who have genetic diseases. This could save millions of lives. If people trusted enough to use it, Kelvor said quietly. Hyun nodded. That was the challenge. The medical applications were incredible, but they meant nothing if people were too afraid to accept help from Valoran technology. Meanwhile, the galaxy was watching. The Galactic Coalition had begun its sanctions as promised. Trade routes that had been open to human ships for decades were now closed. Resources that Earth had been importing became unavailable. Some human colonies began to struggle without coalition support. Ambassador Minho spent his days in meetings with angry politicians and worried colony administrators. Everyone wanted to know the same thing. Was helping the Valorans worth this cost? Minho didn't have an easy answer. The sanctions were hurting humanity. Some colonies were talking about leaving Earth's government, making their own deals with the coalition. But every time he doubted the decision, he thought about Elder Thriss speaking in that square, about Valoran children playing with human children in the colony schools, about scientists like Hyun and Kelvor working together to make discoveries that could help everyone. On Mars, things were getting better slowly. After Thriss's speech, the protests had stopped. Some humans still didn't trust the Valorans, but the violence had ended. People were starting to work together, starting to see that they had more in common than they had differences. Do-yoon stood at his office window, watching a Valoran family walking through the colony with a human family. Their children running ahead together, laughing at something only they understood. It wasn't perfect. There were still problems, still challenges to overcome, but it was better. It was hope, and hope Do-yoon thought was worth fighting for. The galaxy banished them, but humanity took them. In the council chamber floated in the silence of space, a massive ring of metal and glass orbiting the neutral world below. Captain Ji-won Park stood at the observation window, watching as the vote results appeared on the giant display screens. Her reflection stared back at her, dark eyes tired from too many diplomatic meetings that led nowhere good. The numbers glowed red. 217 species had voted. Only 12 had voted against the banishment. Earth was one of them. Ji-won pressed her hand against the cold glass. Outside she could see them. The Valoran fleet. 847,000 souls packed into ships that looked like they might fall apart at any moment. Their vessels were old, patched together with whatever materials they could find. Some of the ships still bore scorch marks from attacks they had barely survived. "It's done then," Ambassador Minho Choi said quietly beside her. He was a tall man with gray streaks in his black hair, and his face looked older than it had just 6 months ago. "They're being cast out. The Valorans had made a mistake. Their scientists had been working on medical technology, trying to cure a plague that was killing their children. They had created something called adaptive nanites, tiny machines smaller than a cell that could change and adjust to help sick bodies heal. But there had been an accident. The nanites had spread beyond the lab. Within a year, every Valoran carried them in their blood. The nanites weren't dangerous. They didn't hurt anyone. They just made the Valorans different. They could breathe different air now, survive in places that would have killed them before. Their bodies adapted faster than any other species in the galaxy, and the Galactic Coalition was terrified." Jiwon watched as the Trellix ambassador gave a speech on the main screen. The insectoid creature's mandibles clicked together as it spoke, its many eyes gleaming with something that looked like satisfaction. The Trellix had pushed hardest for this vote. They had called the Velerans a biological hazard, a threat to all natural life in the galaxy. "Contamination," the Trellix ambassador said, its voice translated into 100 languages simultaneously. "They are contaminated. They cannot be allowed to spread this corruption to other worlds, other species. For the safety of all, they must leave Coalition space. Forever." The vote had been close, but not close enough. The Valorans had no allies strong enough to protect them. Even species that felt sorry for them had voted for banishment, afraid of what the powerful species might do if they voted the other way. Minho turned away from the window. "I need to contact Earth. We need to discuss what happens next." "What happens next is they die," Jiwon said flatly. "Look at those ships, Minho. They have maybe 3 weeks of supplies. 4, if they ration everything. Where are they supposed to go? The Coalition is giving them nothing. No food, no fuel, no coordinates to unclaimed worlds. Just an escort to the border and a threat never to return." "I know." Minho's voice was heavy. "But what can Earth do? We're one species among hundreds. If we oppose this, the Coalition will turn on us too." Jiwon thought about that. Earth had joined the Galactic Coalition 89 years ago, when humanity had finally developed faster-than-light travel. It had been exciting at first, meeting alien species, learning about technologies and cultures beyond imagination, but it had also been humbling. Humanity was small compared to the great powers of the galaxy. Earth had one solar system. The Trellix had thousands. The harmonics controlled entire nebulas. The drifters existed in places humans couldn't even survive. Earth had learned to be careful, to not make waves, to vote with the majority. It was the safe thing to do, but Jiwon kept staring at those refugee ships, and she thought about something her grandmother had told her long ago. Her grandmother had been born in a refugee camp during one of Earth's old wars, before the world had united. She had survived because strangers had taken her family in, had shared food when they had none, had risked everything to protect people they didn't even know. "We can do something," Jiwon said. "We have colony ships. We have space on Mars, on the moon stations, on the outer settlements. We have room." Minho looked at her like she had suggested flying into a star. "Jiwon, if we take them in, the Coalition will sanction us. They'll cut off trade routes. They'll block our expansion into new systems. It could set humanity back decades. And if we don't, we become like them." Jiwon gestured at the council chamber, at all the species that had voted to condemn the Valorans to death. "We become people who watch refugees die because it's convenient." "Is that who we want to be?" Minho was quiet for a long time. Then he pulled out his communication device. "I'll call Earth, but I can't promise they'll agree." The debate on Earth lasted 3 days. Jiwon watched the news feeds from her ship. Politicians argued, citizens protested both for and against helping the Valorans. Scientists testified about the nanites, explaining that they pose no threat to humans. Economists warned about the cost of defying the Coalition. On the 3rd day, Earth's government voted. It was close, closer than Jiwon had hoped, but the result was clear. Earth would offer sanctuary. The Galactic Coalition sent warnings immediately. Trade sanctions would begin within a month. Humanity's application to colonize 3 new systems was denied. The Trellix ambassador made a public statement calling Earth's decision dangerous and foolish. Jiwan didn't care. She had her orders. Her ship, the Horizon's Promise, was a diplomatic vessel, not large but fast and well-equipped. She took it to the edge of Coalition space, where the Valoran fleet was being escorted by Coalition military ships. The military vessels left as soon as the Valorans crossed the border, abandoning them in empty space with no guidance and no hope. Jiwan's communications officer opened a channel to the Valoran fleet. She had practiced what she wanted to say, but now that the moment was here, the prepared speech felt wrong. She spoke from her heart instead. "This is Captain Jiwan Park of the Earthship Horizon's Promise. We know you're scared. We know you've been cast out by the galaxy you called home. We can't give you back what you lost, but we can offer you something else. We have room in our solar system. We have homes being built on new worlds. We have hope for the future. If you're willing, come with us. You don't have to be alone anymore." The response took several minutes. Jiwan waited, her hands gripping the arms of her command chair. Her crew was silent around her, all of them watching the main screen. Then a face appeared. It was Valoran, humanoid but different, with skin that seemed to shimmer slightly and eyes that were larger than human eyes. "The Valoran was crying. You would do this?" the Valoran asked. "After what the galaxy has said about us? After the warnings you've received?" "Yes," Jiwan said simply. "We would do this. Why?" Jiwan thought about her grandmother again, about all the humans throughout history who had chosen compassion over fear. "Because a long time ago, we were refugees too. We know what it's like to be cast out and afraid. We know what it means when someone offers you hope. We won't abandon you." The Valoran fleet followed them home. The galaxy banished them, but humanity took them. In 2 years after the Valorans arrived, Earth was struggling. Admiral Taehyun Song stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking at reports that made his stomach tight with worry. The coalition sanctions had done exactly what they were meant to do. Earth's economy was suffering. Colonies on the frontier were running low on supplies that could only be obtained through coalition trade routes. 3 more colony ships turned back today, his second officer reported. They couldn't get past the coalition blockade points. The Trellix are enforcing the sanctions strictly. Taehyun rubbed his tired eyes. He was a military man, trained to fight battles he could see against enemies he could target. But how did you fight an enemy that used economics and politics as weapons? The coalition wasn't attacking Earth directly. They were just making it harder and harder to survive, squeezing slowly, waiting for humanity to give up and hand over the Valorans. On Earth, Councillor Siwon Kwan was leading a growing political movement. He stood in the government assembly, his voice carrying across the chamber. "How much longer must we suffer for a decision that benefits us nothing? We took in refugees, and what has it gained us? Closed trade routes, blocked expansion, economic hardship for our people. Is this compassion or is this foolishness?" Many representatives nodded in agreement. The coalition sanctions had been in place for 2 years, and people were tired. They were scared. They wanted things to go back to how they were before. "I propose we negotiate with the coalition," Siwon continued. "We find the Valorans a new home, somewhere far from both Earth and coalition space. We do it humanely, we help them settle, but we free ourselves from this burden. Our first responsibility is to humanity, not to aliens who brought this trouble upon themselves." The debate lasted for hours. Some representatives agreed with Siwon. Others argued that abandoning the Valorans now would make humanity no better than the coalition. The vote was scheduled for the following month. While politicians argued, journalist Ji-hee Nam was investigating something strange. She had been covering the Valoran situation since the beginning, and she had sources throughout coalition space. One of those sources, a harmonic who believed in reform, had sent her encrypted files. Ji-hee sat in her small apartment reading through the files on her computer. Her hands started shaking as she understood what she was seeing. These were internal Trellix communications leaked by someone inside their government, and they told a story the galaxy hadn't heard. The Trellix economy was built on selling biological augmentation treatments. For centuries, they had been the galaxy's premier source of genetic modifications, medical enhancements, and adaptive technologies. Species across the coalition paid enormous amounts for Trellix biotech. But Valoran nanites could do everything Trellix treatments could do, and more, and cheaper. If the nanite technology had spread, If other species had started using it, the Trellics would have lost trillions in revenue. Their entire economic power would have collapsed, so they had manufactured the crisis. The communications showed Trellic scientists exaggerating the dangers of the nanites, spreading fear throughout the coalition, pushing for banishment. It wasn't about safety. It was about money and power. Jihi published her findings the next day. The story spread across Earth's networks instantly, then leaked out to other species despite the coalition's attempts to block it. Within a week, the galaxy was talking about the Trellics conspiracy, but the damage was already done, and it was about to get worse. 3 human colony ships were traveling through space near the border of coalition territory. They were carrying supplies to a frontier settlement, taking a longer route to avoid coalition blockades. The ships were unarmed, clearly marked as civilian vessels. The attack came without warning. Unknown ships, their identification codes scrubbed, opened fire. The colony ships' shields failed within minutes. Escape pods launched, but many were destroyed before they could get clear. Admiral Taehyun received the distress call too late. By the time his fleet arrived, all 3 colony ships were destroyed. Debris floated in space. Some escape pods had survived. 17,000 humans were dead. 3,000 more were injured. Taehyun walked through the medical bay of his ship looking at the survivors. Many were children. A little girl, maybe 6 years old, sat on a medical bed with bandages covering her arms. She stared at nothing in shock. Her parents hadn't made it to the escape pods. Who did this? Taehyun asked his intelligence officer later. We don't know for certain. The attack ships left no traces. But Admiral, the attack patterns match coalition military tactics, and there were Trellic signal frequencies detected in the area. Taehyun felt rage build in his chest. They attacked civilian ships. They murdered thousands of unarmed people. We have no proof it was them. Nothing that would hold up in any galactic court. They made sure of that. Earth demanded answers from the coalition. The coalition expressed sympathy but denied any involvement. They suggested that pirates or extremists might be responsible. They offered no help, no investigation, no justice. The galaxy was closer to war than it had been in centuries. Taehyun was ordered to strengthen Earth's defenses. Human ships began patrolling borders aggressively. Every coalition vessel that came near human space was watched carefully. In the middle of this crisis, Valoran scientist Kelvor came to Dr. Hyun with a proposal. They met in the laboratory late at night when few others were around. We've been working on something, Kelvor said. He looked nervous, his fingers tapping against his legs. Theron and I and a few other Valoran scientists. We didn't tell anyone because we weren't sure it would work. But now with what's happening, we need to share it. Hyun leaned forward. What is it? A quantum communication network, Kelvor explained. The nanites can be modified to create entangled particles that maintain connection across any distance. Imagine communication that doesn't rely on coalition relay stations, that can't be intercepted or blocked, that works instantly no matter how far apart the ships are. Hyun's eyes widened. Earth's current communication systems all depended on relay stations, most of which were controlled by the coalition. If they could create their own quantum network, humanity would be independent. This could change everything, Hyun breathed. Why didn't you propose this before? Kelvor met his eyes. Because it requires full integration between human and Valoran technology. Your ships would need to be retrofitted with systems designed by us. Your communication networks would be built on our nanite framework. We would be connected in ways that cannot be easily separated. Some of your people already fear we are changing humanity too much. This would make those fears worse. But it would also make us free, Hyun said. They brought the proposal to Earth's government. The debate was fierce. Some representatives saw the quantum network as salvation, a way to break free from coalition control. Others saw it as exactly what they feared, humanity becoming dependent on alien technology, changing in ways they couldn't predict or control. Counselor Saiwan stood up during the debate. This is the path you're choosing? To bind ourselves even more closely to the Valorans? To become something other than human? Ambassador Minho responded from across the chamber. We're not becoming something other than human. We're becoming something more than what we were. Every species in the galaxy advances by learning from others, by adapting and growing. The Valorans offer us technology that could save us from coalition control. Why would we refuse that out of fear? Because fear is sometimes wisdom, Saiwan shot back. Because change is not always improvement. Because we have a responsibility to preserve what humanity is. Yun spoke next, presenting his research. The quantum network wouldn't change who we are. It's just a communication system like any other. The difference is that it's ours, built in cooperation with our allies, independent of the coalition that's trying to strangle us economically and may have murdered thousands of our people. The reminder of the attack on the colony ships silenced the chamber. Everyone remembered those 3,000 survivors in medical bays, those 17,000 dead. The vote was scheduled for the next day. Admiral Taehyun knew that whatever Earth decided, it would determine humanity's future. Stay with the coalition and abandon the Valorans, returning to what they were before, safe but small, or move forward with the Valorans, building something new, facing unknown challenges but also unknown possibilities. That night, Taehyun visited the little girl from the colony ship attack. She was still in the medical bay. A Valoran nurse was sitting with her, holding her hand and telling her a story about stars that sang. The girl looked up at Taehyun. "Will they hurt us again?" she asked. Taehyun knelt beside her bed. "He didn't lie to children. I don't know. But I promise we will do everything we can to protect you." The nurse says her people were hurt too. She says that's why they understand. The girl squeezed the Valoran's hand. "I think it helps. Understanding." Taehyun looked at the Valoran nurse, who gave him a small, sad smile. In that moment, he understood something important. The choice Earth faced wasn't really about technology or economics or even survival. It was about what kind of species humanity wanted to be. Did they want to be like the Coalition? The galaxy banished them, but humanity took them. 3 years had passed since the Valorans arrived, and Earth had changed in ways no one had predicted. Captain Yoon Ji-yoon stood on the bridge of the Defiance, running her hand along the wall of her ship. The metal felt warm under her fingers, almost alive. That was because, in a way, it was. The Defiance was humanity's first ship built with Valoran nanite-enhanced hull technology. The nanites were woven into the ship's structure, allowing it to repair damage automatically, adapt its shields to different weapons, and respond to threats faster than any ship humanity had built before. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. All systems running at optimal, Chief Engineer Sung-ho An reported from his station. He was grinning like a kid with a new toy, which was basically what he was. The nanite integration is holding perfectly. We've got repair capabilities that would make any coalition ship jealous. Yoonji smiled. Sung-ho had been skeptical about Valoran technology at first, but after working with it for months, he had become its biggest supporter. Let's not get cocky. We still don't know how this ship will perform under real combat conditions. Hopefully, we won't have to find out, her second officer said quietly. But everyone knew that hope was probably false. The coalition had been sending stronger and stronger warnings. They didn't like that humanity was thriving despite the sanctions. They especially didn't like the quantum communication network that now connected all human ships and colonies, making humanity independent of coalition infrastructure. While Yoonji and her crew tested the Defiance, diplomat Youngmi Bae was doing something dangerous. She had traveled in secret to meet with harmonic sympathizers, species within the coalition who disagreed with how the Valorans had been treated. The meeting took place on a remote trading station, in a private room where coalition authorities wouldn't be watching. 3 harmonics floated in the chamber, their crystalline bodies humming with barely audible music. Harmonics communicated through sound and vibration, and Youngmi's translator worked hard to convert their songs into human language. "Your people have made the coalition leadership afraid," the lead harmonic sang. Her name was Celise, and she was a delegate who had voted against Valoran banishment. "By accepting the Valorans and surviving, you have proven that the coalition's power is not absolute. That species can thrive outside their control. Is that why they attacked our colony ships?" Youngmi asked. The anger was still fresh even after a year. Those 17,000 dead haunted every human who thought about them. Celise's song turned sad. "We cannot prove who ordered that attack, but many of us believe it was elements within the Trellix military, acting without official authorization, but also without punishment. They wanted to show humanity the cost of defiance. It didn't work," Youngmi said. "All it did was make us more determined." "Yes, and that frightens the coalition even more." Celise moved closer, her crystalline body refracting the light into small rainbows. There are many species like mine who want change, who believe the coalition has become corrupt, focused on maintaining power rather than helping its members. But we need proof that an alternative exists. We need to see that your human-Valoran alliance is not just surviving but thriving. Youngmi understood what Celise was really saying. The Harmonics and others like them needed humanity to succeed. They needed to see that a different way was possible. What happens if we fail? She asked. Then the hardliners win. The coalition becomes even more controlling, even more willing to crush anyone who questions their authority. Silas's song became urgent. You must not fail. Back in human space, Admiral Taehyun was planning something that would either prove Youngmi's alliance right or destroy humanity's credibility forever. He stood in a secure meeting room with President Min Ji-han, who had been elected 6 months ago on a platform of strength and independence. You want to take a fleet into the Forbidden Zone? Minji asked, looking at the star charts Taehyun had displayed. The region the coalition has declared off limits for 1,000 years? Yes, Taehyun said simply. The coalition claims the Forbidden Zone is too dangerous, filled with spatial anomalies that destroy any ship that enters. But our new ships, built with Valoran technology, are more adaptable than anything the coalition has. If we can navigate the Forbidden Zone and return, we prove that our technology is superior. We prove that we don't need the coalition. And if you're wrong, if the Forbidden Zone really is as dangerous as they claim, Taehyun met her eyes. Then we lose some ships. But Madam President, we're already at risk. The coalition is preparing for military intervention. Our intelligence confirms they're moving fleets toward our borders. We need to do something dramatic, something that shows we're not afraid and that we're capable of things they can't do. Minji was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, You'll take volunteers only. No one is ordered into the Forbidden Zone. And Taehyun, come back. We need you. The call for volunteers was answered immediately. Every captain wanted a place on the mission. Yoonji and the Defiance were chosen to lead, along with 5 other ships equipped with Valoran technology. Valoran Commander Theron, who had helped design the nanite hull systems, insisted on coming along. Our people brought this technology to you, Theron said when Unji tried to argue. If it fails, we should be there to face that failure together. The small fleet departed a week later. They traveled to the edge of mapped space where the gravitational anomalies began. The Forbidden Zone looked beautiful from the outside, a region of space where stars seemed to dance and twist, where light bent in ways that shouldn't be possible. Sensors are going crazy, Sungho reported. I'm reading gravitational fluctuations that shouldn't exist, spatial distortions that make no sense according to physics. That's why no one comes here, Theron said calmly. Normal ships cannot adapt fast enough to survive these conditions. But our ships are not normal. Yoonji took a deep breath. All ships follow the Defiance. Stay close. Trust your nanite systems to adapt. They entered the Forbidden Zone. Immediately, the ship began to shake. Alarms blared as sensors detected spatial tiers opening around them. But then the nanites in the hull responded. Yoonji felt the ship change, felt it flow and shift like a living thing, adapting to the impossible conditions around them. Hull integrity holding, Sungho called out, amazement in his voice. The nanites are reconfiguring in real time, creating flexible shield geometries we didn't even program. They're learning from the environment. For 3 days, the fleet navigated through the Forbidden Zone. They encountered conditions that would have torn apart any normal ship. Gravity wells that appeared without warning. Spatial rifts that opened like hungry mouths. Energy storms that could boil metal. But the ship survived, adapted, learned, and then they found something. In the heart of the Forbidden Zone, protected by all these dangerous anomalies, there was a structure. It was massive, bigger than any space station humanity had ever built, and it was clearly artificial. The design was unlike anything in Coalition records. What is that? Yoonji whispered. They approached carefully. The structure was old, incredibly old. Parts of it were damaged, drifting apart. But other parts still functioned, still showed signs of power. Sungho led a team aboard, and what they found changed everything. The structure was a library, a database containing the history of an ancient civilization that had once spanned the galaxy. The records were fragmentary, but the story was clear. This civilization had been powerful, advanced beyond anything currently existing. They had achieved unity across 1,000 species, created technologies that seemed like magic, and they had destroyed themselves. The records showed how fear and distrust had grown, how the powerful species had tried to control the weaker ones, how difference had been treated as threat. How in the end they had fought wars that consumed entire star systems until nothing was left but ruins and warnings. The Coalition knew about this. The records showed that Coalition leaders had found this place centuries ago. They had declared it forbidden not because it was dangerous, but because they didn't want anyone to learn the truth. They didn't want species to know that the Coalition was repeating the same mistakes that had destroyed the ancients. "We need to tell everyone," Theron said, looking at the records in horror. "The whole galaxy needs to know what happened here." Yunji nodded. "Sungho, can we copy the database?" "Already on it, Captain." "This is too important to leave hidden." The fleet returned from the Forbidden Zone triumphant. They had survived what the Coalition claimed was impossible. And they brought proof that the Coalition had been hiding the truth for centuries. Admiral Taihyun stood beside Yunji as they broadcast their findings to the entire galaxy. The transmission couldn't be blocked by the Coalition because of the quantum network. Every species, every colony, every ship in known space received the message. The broadcast showed the ancient ruins. It showed the records of a civilization destroyed by the same fears and controls that the Coalition now enforced. It showed that the Coalition leadership had hidden this truth, had lied about the Forbidden Zone, had tried to keep all species ignorant of history's warning. "The Coalition tells you they keep you safe," Taehyun said in his broadcast. "The galaxy banished them, but humanity took them." In 5 years after the Valorans arrived, President Minji Han stood in the assembly hall on Earth, looking at representatives from 23 different species. Some were human, some were Valoran. Others were harmonics and small species that had never been powerful in the Coalition, and even a few Trellics who disagreed with their government's choices. "We're making history today," she said quietly to Valoran Chancellor Davin, who stood beside her. Davin had been elected 6 months ago in the first joint human-Valoran government. His people had voted and humans had voted, and together they had chosen leaders for their alliance. "History is easy to make," Davin replied softly. "What's hard is making sure it's the right kind of history." The Terran-Valoran alliance had grown beyond anyone's expectations. After the broadcast from the Forbidden Zone, species across the galaxy had started questioning the Coalition. Some quietly, some loudly. The Harmonics had been first, with Delegate Solis leading a reform faction that demanded changes to how the Coalition operated. Other species had followed. The small ones, the ones who had always been pushed around by the powerful, suddenly had hope that things could be different. And a few of the powerful ones, the ones who were tired of endless political games and control, had joined too. But change was never easy. And the hardline Coalition forces were not going to give up without a fight. Young scientist Jamin O worked in a laboratory carved into an asteroid, studying the ancient technology they had recovered from the Forbidden Zone. He was 23 years old, had graduated top of his class, and was now part of the most important research project in human history. "I think I understand how this works," he said excitedly to his team, which included both humans and Valorans. The ancients didn't just build technology. They built technology that could merge with biology, that could adapt and grow. It's like what the Valoran nanites do, but on a massive scale. His Valoran colleague examined the data. "If we could replicate even a fraction of this, we could help species adapt to any environment. Imagine colonies on worlds that are currently impossible to settle. Imagine medicine that could cure any disease," Jamin added. "Imagine ships that could travel farther and faster than anything we've dreamed of. This technology could benefit the entire galaxy. If the galaxy is willing to accept it," his colleague said doubtfully. That was the question. The Terran-Valoran alliance had extended an open invitation to any species seeking refuge or partnership. The first to arrive had been more harmonics, fleeing persecution from Coalition authorities who didn't like reform talk. Then came others, a steady stream of ships carrying people who wanted something different, something better. But the hardliners in the Coalition saw this as a threat. They saw species leaving, saw the alliance growing stronger, saw their control slipping away, and they decided to act. Admiral Taehyun received the warning from his intelligence network. "Coalition forces are gathering at 3 points along our border," his officer reported. "Trellick's battle fleets, supported by 5 other species. They're preparing for a military strike." Taehyun felt the familiar cold focus that came before battle. "How long do we have?" 3 days, maybe 4. "Get me President Minji and someone find Ambassador Minho. We need to try one more time to prevent this." Minho sent desperate messages to every contact he had in the coalition. He spoke with Silas and the other moderates, begging them to stop what was coming. But the hardliners had the military, and they were done talking. They believe that if they crush you, they crush the reform movement, Silas sang sadly over the communication channel. They think that destroying the alliance will make everyone else afraid to challenge their authority. Will it work? Minho asked. That depends on whether you survive, Silas replied. Taehyun gathered his fleet. Every ship humanity had enhanced with Valoran technology prepared for battle. Captain Yoonji and the Defiance took point position. All across human space, people waited and hoped and prayed. The coalition fleet arrived as expected. It was massive. Hundreds of ships representing the combined military power of 6 species. They had overwhelming numbers, superior firepower, and centuries of military experience. By every logical calculation, humanity should lose. The coalition commander broadcast a simple message. Surrender the Valorans. Dismantle your illegal quantum network. Submit to coalition authority. You have 1 hour to comply. President Minji broadcast her response to both the coalition fleet and the entire galaxy. We will not surrender people who have done nothing wrong. We will not give up the independence we have built. We will not submit to authority that is based on fear and control. If you choose to attack, you attack not just humanity, but the idea that species can be free to choose their own path. The hour passed. The coalition fleet advanced. The battle began. Coalition ships opened fire, their weapons blazing across space. But the human ships didn't fight the way the coalition expected. They moved like nothing the coalition had seen before, dodging and weaving, their nanite-enhanced hulls adapting to each attack. When coalition weapons hit, the damage repaired itself within minutes. Yoonji commanded the Defiance with calm precision. Sungho, redirect power to forward shields. Navigation, take us through that gap in their formation. Weapons, target their command ship's communication array. The Defiance danced through the battle impossibly fast, impossible to predict. Other human ships followed her lead, using tactics that confused and frustrated coalition commanders who were used to slower, more predictable enemies. But numbers still mattered. For every coalition ship the humans damaged, there were 5 more to take its place. Taehyun watched from his flagship as the battle turned against them. They were fighting well, better than anyone expected, but they couldn't win. Then something unexpected happened. A coalition ship broke formation. Then another. Then an entire squadron. They were harmonic ships refusing to fight. Their commanders broadcast messages explaining they would not attack people who were only trying to be free. More ships stopped fighting. Some small species, some who had been bullied by the coalition for centuries, saw this as their chance to choose a different side. A few Trellic ships even held position, their crews torn between orders and conscience. The coalition commander screamed orders, threatened punishments, demanded obedience. But something had broken. The fear that kept the coalition together, the fear that made species obey even when they disagreed, was cracking. Admiral Taehyun saw the moment when the battle changed. Half the coalition fleet was no longer fighting. Some were withdrawing, some were simply floating in space refusing to advance. Some were actively defending human ships against their former allies. Cease fire, Taehyun ordered. All ships defensive positions only. Do not fire unless fired upon. The battle ended not with a massive explosion or a surrender, but with silence. The coalition fleet that remained, the hardliners who still wanted to fight, found themselves alone. They withdrew slowly, threats and warnings filling the communication channels. But everyone knew those threats were empty now. In the aftermath, Delegate Silas sent a message to President Minji. We are ready to negotiate. Those of us who want reform, who want a new way, we are ready to build something better. The signing of the Terran Accords took place on Earth 3 months later. It was held in a huge hall that had been built specifically for this moment, with seats for representatives from dozens of species. The Accords created a new framework for galactic civilization, based on principles humanity had brought to the stars. The key principles were simple. No species would be forced to join. No species would be expelled for being different. Decisions would be made cooperatively, with every member having a voice. Technology and knowledge would be shared freely. Diversity would be celebrated, not feared. 23 species signed on the first day. More would come later, as word spread across the galaxy. The coalition still existed, but it was changing, reforming, becoming something closer to what it had claimed to be all along. Jamin and his team unveiled their first breakthrough from the ancient technology. It was a medical device small enough to hold in one hand that could diagnose and treat almost any illness. They offered the plans freely to any species that wanted them. Admiral Taehyun, who had fought so hard to protect what they had built, was promoted to lead the Alliance's combined defense forces. Captain Yoonji became his second in command. Together, they trained crews from multiple species, teaching them not just how to fight, but when not to fight, when cooperation was stronger than conflict. On the 5th anniversary of the Velleran's arrival, Jiwon Park stood with Elder Thriss on a platform overlooking a ceremony. Below them, the first mixed-species crew was preparing to launch on an exploration mission into uncharted space. There were humans, Vellerans, harmonics, and others, all working together. "We were banished by a galaxy afraid of difference," Thriss said softly. "You took us in despite the cost. Now together we've shown them a better way," Jiwon smiled. "Humanity learned long ago that our greatest strength lies not in standing alone, but in standing together. We didn't save you. We saved ourselves from becoming what they were. What do you think is out there?"